The medical tent reeked of antiseptic and desperation. Corporal Jake Morrison lay motionless on the battlefield cot, his left arm wrapped in biogel bandages that glowed faintly blue in the dim light. The Zephyrian medics had done what they could, but their assessment was clear. The human sniper was finished. Nerve damage is too severe, chittered Medical Officer ZXTH through his translator unit. His insect-like mandibles clicked disapprovingly as he studied the readings on his scanner. The projectile severed 3 major neural pathways. Even with our advanced regeneration technology, full motor function will never return. The human is combat ineffective. Commander Veltar, a towering reptilian Craxian, loomed over Morrison's bed. His yellow eyes showed neither sympathy nor concern, only cold military calculation. Then, we evacuate him with the other wounded. The hegemony assault begins at dawn, and we cannot spare resources on damaged assets. Morrison's eyes remained closed, but his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. 3 months of fighting alongside these alien soldiers had taught him their language, though he'd never let them know it. Every word they spoke cut deeper than the plasma bolt that had shattered his shoulder. The Galactic Defense Coalition had been humanity's ticket to the stars. When the hegemony wars erupted across 12 systems, Earth's military had volunteered their best soldiers to prove humanity belonged among the galactic powers. Morrison had been proud to serve, his marksmanship records earning grudging respect even from species that had been perfecting warfare for millennia. But respect, he'd learned, was a fragile thing. The human's previous performance metrics were adequate, Veltar continued, his forked tongue tasting the air dismissively. 47 confirmed eliminations in the Proxima campaign. But precision weapons require precision motor control. Without his shooting ability, he is merely another fragile mammal consuming rations. Lieutenant Kresh, a Zephyrian tactical officer, buzzed closer to examine Morrison's medical chart. His species shows remarkable healing capacity compared to baseline sentience. Perhaps in several lunar cycles. Veltar's laugh was a harsh bark. The hegemony will have conquered 3 more systems by then. No, the human returns to his homeworld. We have real soldiers to command. Morrison felt something cold settle in his chest, colder than the plasma burn that had nearly killed him. Real soldiers. The phrase echoed in his mind as footsteps retreated from his bedside. 3 months of bleeding alongside these aliens, of watching their backs, of proving human worth one impossible shot at a time, all erased by a single moment of vulnerability. The tent fell silent except for the soft humming of medical equipment and the distant rumble of artillery. Morrison finally opened his eyes, staring at the canvas ceiling. His left arm was indeed useless. Fingers that once caressed triggers with surgical precision, now barely able to twitch. The medics weren't wrong about the nerve damage, but they were wrong about everything else. A new sound drifted through the tent walls, the high-pitched whine of hegemony scout ships probing the perimeter defenses. Morrison had heard that sound too many times to count, had put plasma bolts through the pilots of dozens of those scouts. His hand instinctively moved toward where his rifle would normally rest, but found only empty air. "Sir," a young human voice broke the silence. Private Chen poked his head through the tent flap, his face creased with worry. "I heard they're shipping you out tomorrow, before the big push." Morrison's voice came out as a rasp. "That's the plan. But, sir, we need you out there. The aliens, they fight like machines, all tactics and no heart. When things get desperate, when the lines start to break, they calculate losses and retreat. But you never give up. The squad knows it. Hell, even some of the alien grunts know it. Not anymore, Chun." Morrison held up his damaged arm. "Can't even hold a rifle steady." Chun stepped closer, lowering his voice. "With respect, sir, you taught us that shooting isn't just about steady hands. It's about seeing what others miss. Knowing when to take the shot, that changes everything." He paused, glancing around the empty tent. Dawn came with the thunder of hegemony dreadnoughts dropping out of hyperspace. Morrison felt the vibrations through his cot as massive ships settled into assault positions above the planet's atmosphere. The evacuation transport was scheduled to depart in 2 hours, but the enemy had arrived early. "All medical personnel to emergency stations." The announcement crackled through speakers in a dozen alien languages. "Hegemony ground forces detected." Multiple drop pods inbound. Morrison rolled off his cot, ignoring the fire that shot through his damaged shoulder. Through the tent's observation window, he could see the first wave of drop pods streaking through the morning sky like falling stars. Each pod carried 30 hegemony shock troopers, their exoskeletons designed to punch through coalition defenses like armor-piercing rounds. The tent shook as the first pods impacted beyond the ridgeline. Soon the entire camp would be under direct assault, and Morrison was supposed to be climbing aboard a transport, running home to Earth with his tail between his legs. "Not today," he muttered, forcing his feet toward the equipment locker. His personal gear had been packed for transport, but Morrison knew exactly where to find what he needed. The Coalition Armory was a testament to galactic cooperation. Zephyrian plasma rifles with their chittering energy chambers, Craxian pulse cannons that could punch through starship hull plating, and tucked away in one corner, human kinetic weapons that the aliens considered primitive. Morrison's fingers traced the familiar weight of an M2010 enhanced sniper weapon system. The rifle was an antique by galactic standards, still relying on chemically propelled projectiles instead of exotic energy systems. Most coalition forces dismissed human firearms as barely more effective than throwing rocks. That misconception had cost the hegemony dearly in previous engagements. The weapon's smart scope linked to Morrison's neural implant, compensating for his damaged motor control with micro-adjustments that would keep his shots true. It wasn't the same as having full use of his arm, but it would have to do. "Corporal Morrison," Dr. Zixth chittered angrily as Morrison limped past the medical station. "You are classified as non-combat effective. Return to your assigned transport immediately." "Transport's not leaving anyway. Document." Morrison nodded toward the tactical displays showing enemy positions. "Drop pods just bracketed the landing field. We're all stuck here until someone deals with those shock troopers." The Zephyrian's compound eyes darted between Morrison and the tactical screen. The human was correct. 3 hegemony pods had landed in perfect positions to interdict any evacuation attempts. It was a classic hegemony tactic: trap the wounded and force the enemy to waste resources on rescue operations. Morrison slung his rifle and headed for the tent exit. Besides, somebody needs to thin out those pods before they overrun the perimeter. Might as well be the guy with nothing left to lose. He stepped into chaos. Coalition forces scrambled to establish defensive positions as hegemony shock troopers advanced across the valley floor. The aliens moved like a dark tide, their powered exoskeletons allowing them to bound between cover points within human speed. Energy weapons crackled back and forth, turning the morning air electric with the smell of ozone and burned metal. Morrison found a position on the ridge overlooking the main approach, a rocky outcrop that provided excellent sightlines across the battlefield. His damaged arm screamed in protest as he settled the rifle into a stable firing position, but the weapon's bipod and his makeshift brace would have to compensate. Through his scope, Morrison studied the advancing hegemony forces. Their tactics were flawless, textbook assaults that maximize firepower while minimizing exposure. Squad leaders coordinated movements with mathematical precision, advancing in bounds that coalition defensive algorithms struggled to predict. But Morrison wasn't thinking like a machine. He was thinking like a hunter. The first shot took out a hegemony squad leader who'd positioned himself to direct his unit's advance. The .300 Winchester Magnum round punched through the alien's exoskeleton armor like it was paper, sending the squad into momentary confusion as they lost their tactical coordination. Morrison was already acquiring his next target before the first body hit the ground. 3 more shots eliminated key personnel: a communications specialist calling in artillery support, a heavy weapons operator setting up a plasma cannon, and another squad leader who tried to take over coordination duties. Each shot was carefully calculated, not for maximum casualties, but for maximum disruption. "Contact! Sniper on the ridge!" Hegemony voices crackled across intercepted communications. "Squad Omega, eliminate the threat." Morrison smiled grimly as an entire squad diverted from their primary objective to hunt him. 30 elite shock troopers pulled away from the main assault to chase one wounded human with an obsolete rifle. The aliens' tactical efficiency had become a weakness. They couldn't ignore a threat to their command structure, even a seemingly minor one. The diverted squad advanced up the ridge with mechanical precision, their movements coordinated through tactical networks that should have made Morrison's position untenable. Energy bolts scorched the rocks around his hiding spot as they closed in, their superior numbers and firepower overwhelming. But Morrison had already moved. Using terrain knowledge gained from weeks of reconnaissance, he planned 3 fallback positions connected by concealed routes. By the time the Hegemony squad reached his first firing position, Morrison was already shooting from his second, putting rounds into their flanks while they searched empty rocks. More squads were diverted to hunt the Phantom Sniper. Coalition defensive lines that should have been overwhelmed instead held firm as Hegemony forces chased a single human across the ridgeline. Morrison's shots weren't just eliminating targets. They were rewriting the entire tactical situation. From his third position, Morrison watched Hegemony reinforcements arriving to support the main assault. Fresh drop pods streaked overhead, but their landing coordinates had shifted. Instead of reinforcing the primary attack, they were deploying to support the sniper hunt. One wounded human was reshaping a battle involving thousands of soldiers. The coalition defensive network finally recognized what was happening. Communication channels buzzed with confused reports as alien commanders tried to understand how their carefully planned assault had devolved into a desperate search for a single enemy sniper. But in the medical tent, Dr. ZXTH was beginning to understand something else entirely. The human's medical readings showed severe nerve damage, muscle tremors, and pain levels that should have rendered him unconscious. By every medical standard, Corporal Morrison should have been helpless. Yet somehow, impossible shots were still finding their targets across the battlefield. After Chen left, Morrison lay in the darkness thinking about those words. The alien commanders saw only damaged nerve pathways and diminished utility. They calculated his worth in targeting accuracy and trigger control, reducing a soldier to mere statistics. They didn't understand humans at all. Outside, the Hegemony scouts screamed past again, their engines growing bolder as they probed deeper into coalition territory. Morrison closed his eyes and listened, his mind already working on problems the alien commanders couldn't see. Tomorrow's battle would be brutal, and they were sending him away right when his people needed him most. But perhaps being underestimated was exactly the advantage he needed. Morrison's fourth position was a narrow cave halfway down the ridge's reverse slope. The space barely accommodated his body, but it offered perfect concealment and sight lines toward the Hegemony's secondary landing zone. Through his scope, he watched enemy commanders growing increasingly frustrated as their coordinated assault dissolved into scattered hunting parties. Sigma Squad, report status, crackled the intercepted Hegemony communications. Still searching Grid 7 Alpha. No contact with target. Request additional support units. Negative Sigma. All reserves committed to primary objective. Morrison's lips curved into a cold smile. There were no reserves left. He'd forced the Hegemony to commit every available unit to either the main assault or hunting him, leaving no tactical flexibility. The alien commanders were discovering what human guerrilla fighters had proven for centuries. Sometimes the most effective weapon wasn't the biggest gun, but the one that forced your enemy to fight on your terms. His neural implant chimed softly, indicating movement in his scope's peripheral sensors. 3 Hegemony shock troopers were working their way along the ridge, using advanced scanning equipment to track his previous positions. Their exoskeletons hummed with power as they bounded between cover points, their movements coordinated through tactical networks. Morrison studied their pattern, noting how they moved in perfect sync, each trooper covering specific approach angles while maintaining communication with their squad leader. It was flawless tactical doctrine, the kind of coordination that had made Hegemony forces feared across 12 systems. It was also predictable. Morrison shifted his aim to a loose boulder field above the advancing troopers. His first shot struck a key support stone, triggering a controlled avalanche that forced the squad to dive for cover. While they scrambled to avoid the falling rocks, Morrison put precision rounds into their scanning equipment and communication arrays. Suddenly, 3 of the Hegemony's most elite soldiers found themselves isolated, their high-tech coordination reduced to primitive hand signals and direct line of sight communication. Morrison picked them off one by one as they tried to re-establish contact with their command structure. "This is impossible," muttered Lieutenant Kresh as he monitored the battlefield from the Coalition command post. The human's medical readings show complete loss of fine motor control in his primary shooting arm. How is he maintaining this level of accuracy? Commander Veltar's scaled hide rippled with agitation as more reports flooded in. 2 more hegemony squads have been eliminated, and the enemy's main assault was stalling as commanders diverted forces to deal with the sniper threat. It must be equipment malfunction, Veltar hissed. No wounded soldier could perform at this level. Run full diagnostics on all monitoring systems. But the diagnostics showed exactly what Dr. 60H had already confirmed. Morrison's left arm was indeed severely damaged, with nerve pathways that should have made precise shooting impossible. What the medical scanners couldn't measure was something uniquely human, the ability to adapt, to find new ways to accomplish old missions when the original methods failed. Morrison had indeed lost fine motor control in his left arm. But decades of marksmanship training had taught him to shoot from dozens of different positions and configurations. When his left arm failed, he shifted to modified techniques that relied more on his right side, using his damaged arm simply as support. When tremors made traditional breathing techniques ineffective, he adjusted his rhythm to work with his body's new limitations. Most importantly, when his physical capabilities diminished, Morrison had learned to rely more heavily on preparation, patience, and tactical thinking. Every shot was now planned 3 moves ahead. Every position chosen to maximize advantage while minimizing exposure. The aliens measured his effectiveness purely in terms of physical capability, like a machine with damaged components. They couldn't comprehend that human soldiers were more than the sum of their physical parts. From his 5th position, a concealed depression near the ridge's crest, Morrison observed the hegemony's growing desperation. Their assault had completely stalled as more units were diverted to hunt him. The main defensive line, which should have been overwhelmed an hour ago, was actually beginning to counterattack. Morrison's scope detected new movement, a hegemony command unit establishing a coordination post in the valley below. The unit included high-ranking officers whose elimination would further disrupt enemy operations. But the position was heavily defended and at extreme range for his equipment. The shot would require every adaptation he'd made, every technique he'd developed to compensate for his injuries. It would also expose his position to immediate retaliation, likely ending his involvement in the battle permanently. Morrison didn't hesitate. The round flew true across impossible distance, finding its target just as hegemony scanners triangulated Morrison's position. Return fire turned his hiding spot into molten rock, but the damage was done. The command unit was eliminated, and, with it, the hegemony's ability to coordinate their scattered forces. Morrison rolled away from the ruined position, his damaged arm screaming in agony, but his mind was already calculating the battle's new dynamics. Without centralized coordination, the hegemony assault would collapse into individual unit actions. Coalition forces could defeat scattered elements far more easily than they could stop a coordinated assault. As he moved toward his final fallback position, Morrison's communicator crackled with an incoming transmission from Coalition Command. Corporal Morrison, respond immediately. Commander Veltar's voice carried notes of surprise and grudging respect. The hegemony assault is collapsing. Their forces are withdrawing to defensive positions. How did you... Morrison cut the transmission without responding. He had one more shot to take, one more piece to remove from the board. Through his scope, he could see the hegemony evacuation coordinator organizing the withdrawal, trying to salvage tactical advantage from mission's failure. That coordinator would not complete his mission. The shot echoed across the valley, followed by the distinctive whine of hegemony transports beginning emergency evacuation procedures. The assault that was supposed to overwhelm coalition defenses had been reduced to a desperate retreat. Morrison finally allowed himself to collapse against a boulder, his rifle across his knees, his damaged arm hanging useless at his side. Around him, the sounds of battle were fading as hegemony forces pulled back to their orbital positions. One wounded human with an obsolete rifle had just defeated the hegemony's finest assault force. But Morrison knew the real victory wasn't in the shots he'd made. It was in forcing an entire army to learn what human soldiers had always known: Sometimes the deadliest weapon on a battlefield wasn't the one that could kill the most enemies, but the one that could think. The coalition command post buzzed with activity as officers tried to process what had just occurred. Tactical displays showed the impossible. A full-scale hegemony assault planned for months and executed with mathematical precision had been completely neutralized by the actions of a single wounded soldier. Commander Veltar stood motionless before the main tactical screen, his reptilian features unreadable as he studied the battle's progression. Every military instinct told him that what he was seeing was impossible. Individual soldiers, no matter how skilled, simply could not influence battles involving thousands of combatants and orbital support elements. Yet the data was undeniable. Casualty reports, Lieutenant Veltar commanded. Kresh's wings buzzed nervously as he compiled the information. Coalition losses, 37 wounded, 12 killed. Hegemony losses, 216 confirmed eliminated, with estimated additional casualties during their withdrawal. Sir, these numbers are unprecedented, Veltar finished. A casualty ratio of 18-1 against elite assault forces. The hegemony commanders will demand explanations that our tactical computers cannot provide. Dr. ZXTH approached the command group, his medical scanner still active. Commander, I've been monitoring Corporal Morrison's biometric data throughout the engagement. His performance indicators show massive neural compensation patterns that our medical database cannot classify. Expen Veltar ordered. The human brain appears to be rewiring itself in real time, creating new neural pathways to bypass damaged tissues. But more significantly, his tactical processing centers are operating at levels 40% above human baseline parameters. It's as if the injury triggered some form of enhanced cognitive function. Veltar's forked tongue tasted the air thoughtfully. Enhanced function? You're suggesting the human has become more effective due to the wounds. Not due to them, sir. In spite of them. The compensation mechanisms his neural system developed to maintain basic function appear to have had unexpected secondary effects on his tactical processing abilities. Lieutenant Kresh pulled up Morrison's combat records on the tactical display. His previous performance metrics were indeed within acceptable parameters. 93rd percentile for accuracy, 78th percentile for tactical awareness. Competent, but not exceptional by Galactic standards. And now? Veltar asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Based on today's engagement, sir, his tactical performance exceeds our measurement parameters. The computer classifies his actions as impossible for a single operator. Veltar studied the tactical replay, watching as Morrison's movements systematically dismantled the hegemony assault. Each position had been chosen not just for immediate tactical advantage, but for its effect on enemy decision-making patterns. The human hadn't just been shooting targets. He'd been manipulating the entire battle's flow. He was thinking 12 moves ahead, Veltar murmured, like a chess master facing novices. Sir, Kresh didn't understand the reference. A human game of tactical complexity. But that comparison understates what we witnessed here. Corporal Morrison didn't just outthink individual opponents. He outthought their entire command structure. A communication alert interrupted the discussion. The message was marked with Galactic Defense Coalition priority codes, transmitted directly from Sector Command. Commander Veltar, you are ordered to provide immediate tactical analysis of today's engagement. Hegemony forces across 3 systems have ceased offensive operations pending investigation of their defeat at your location. Fleet Command requires explanation for how a single wounded soldier neutralized a full assault division. Veltar stared at the message. The implications were staggering. If one human could affect operations across multiple star systems, what did that mean for the Coalition's understanding of human military potential? Dr. ZXTH, I need complete medical and psychological profiles on all human personnel under my command. If Corporal Morrison's performance represents some form of species adaptation, we need to identify others who might possess similar capabilities. Sir, Kresh interjected, there may be additional factors to consider. Our tactical analysis suggests that Corporal Morrison's effectiveness wasn't solely due to enhanced cognitive function. His choice of equipment, positioning, and targets showed deep understanding of hegemony, psychological warfare doctrine. Explain. The humans have been studying our tactics, sir. Not just learning them, but analyzing their psychological foundations. Morrison didn't just disrupt the hegemony assault. He exploited fundamental assumptions in their tactical programming. Veltar felt a chill run down his spine. You're suggesting this was planned? Not the injury, sir. But the adaptation techniques Morrison employed suggest extensive preparation for exactly this type of scenario. The humans have been developing contingency protocols for combat effectiveness under severe physical impairment. The command post fell silent as the implications sank in. Human military doctrine wasn't just different from galactic standards, it was fundamentally more flexible. Where alien military systems relied on optimal performance from healthy soldiers operating advanced equipment, humans had developed methods to maintain effectiveness even when everything went wrong. There's something else, Dr. Zixth added quietly. Corporal Morrison's neural adaptation patterns suggest this isn't an isolated capability. Based on human neuroplasticity studies, any member of their species could potentially develop similar compensation mechanisms under extreme stress. Veltar's tactical mind reeled at the implications. If humans could adapt their combat effectiveness in real time, becoming more dangerous rather than less dangerous when wounded or equipment deprived, then every assumption about human military value needed revision. Contact Corporal Morrison immediately, Veltar ordered. I want a full debriefing on his tactical methodology. Sir, he's not responding to communication attempts, Kresh reported. Last sensor contact showed him moving toward the forward observation posts. He's still hunting, Dr. Zixth realized. The hegemony withdrawal isn't complete. There are still scattered units in the area, and Morrison is tracking them. Veltar pulled up the real-time tactical display. Sure enough, several hegemony stragglers were attempting to establish observation posts for future operations. Standard coalition protocol would be to monitor these units while preparing countermeasures. Morrison was eliminating them. How many coalition soldiers would it take to neutralize those observation posts? Veltar asked. Kresh ran rapid calculations. Minimum of 2 full squads with air support, sir. The positions are heavily fortified and have overlapping fields of fire. And Corporal Morrison intends to handle this alone. Based on his previous performance patterns, sir, he's probably already begun. As if summoned by their conversation, Morrison's voice crackled through the communication system. Command, this is Morrison. Hegemony observation posts neutralized. Recommend immediate forward reconnaissance to confirm area security. Morrison out. The command post stared at the tactical display in stunned silence. The hegemony positions that would have required 2 squads and air support had simply vanished from the sensors. Commander Veltar finally understood that everything he thought he knew about human military capability had been wrong. Dangerously, catastrophically wrong. The question now was whether the rest of the galaxy would learn this lesson before it was too late. 3 days after the battle, Morrison sat in the Coalition Medical Center, his arm finally receiving proper treatment from a team of specialists who now looked at him with something approaching awe. The nerve regeneration therapy was progressing faster than anyone had predicted, but Morrison knew his arm would never be quite the same. He didn't care. He'd learned something more valuable than perfect motor control. Corporal Morrison, Commander Veltar approached, his usual dismissive demeanor replaced by careful respect. Fleet Command has requested a full tactical debrief of your actions during the hegemony assault. Your methods will be studied at the Galactic War College. Morrison looked up from his medical readings. My methods weren't complicated, sir. I adapted to circumstances and exploited enemy weaknesses. Basic infantry tactics. Basic. Dr. Zixth chittered, and what Morrison had learned was Zephyrian amusement. Corporal, your basic tactics have caused the hegemony to completely revise their assault doctrines across 12 systems. 3 separate enemy fleets have been recalled for retraining because their commanders no longer trust their tactical algorithms. The algorithms weren't the problem, Morrison replied. The problem was assuming that damaged soldiers become less dangerous instead of more creative. Lieutenant Kresh approached with a datapad displaying fleet communications. Sir, we're receiving reports from other theaters. Human soldiers across the coalition are being reassigned from support roles to primary combat positions. Command wants to test whether your performance represents broader human capabilities. Morrison felt a surge of satisfaction. For months, human soldiers have been relegated to secondary roles while aliens handled what they considered real combat. Now, finally, his people would get the chance to show what they could really do. There's more, Veltar continued. The hegemony has requested negotiations. They're offering territorial concessions in exchange for human military advisory positions within their own forces. Morrison's eyebrows shot up. They want us to teach them how to fight like humans? Apparently, losing an entire assault division to a single wounded soldier has convinced them that human tactical thinking represents a significant strategic advantage. They're willing to pay considerable resources to access that advantage. Morrison considered this development. The irony was perfect. Aliens who had dismissed human military potential were now begging to learn human methods. But there was a deeper implication that troubled him. Commander, the hegemony doesn't understand what happened here. They think it was about tactics and technology, but it wasn't. It was about something they can't learn or copy. Expen Veltar ordered. Morrison gestured toward the tactical displays, still showing the battle's aftermath. Every species in this galaxy has optimized their soldiers for peak performance under ideal conditions. Perfect equipment, optimal health, coordinated support. When those conditions disappear, your effectiveness drops proportionally. And humans expect everything to go wrong. We train for equipment failure, for isolation, for fighting while wounded or outnumbered or undersupplied. We don't optimize for peak performance. We optimize for surviving when everything falls apart. Dr. Zixth leaned forward, his compound eyes reflecting Morrison's words back at him. You're suggesting that human military doctrine is built around failure states? Not failure. Adaptation. Every human soldier learns to fight effectively with whatever they have, wherever they are, under whatever conditions exist. We don't need perfect circumstances to be dangerous. Morrison stood up, his healing arm still weak, but functional. The hegemony can study my tactics all they want. They can copy my positioning, my target selection, even my weapon modifications. But they can't copy the mindset that created those tactics. Which mindset is that? Veltar asked. Morrison smiled, remembering Private Chen's words from days earlier. The mindset that says giving up isn't an option. That says being wounded doesn't make you worthless. That says as long as you're breathing, you can still complete the mission. He gestured toward the reports flooding in from other theaters, where human soldiers were being reassigned to primary combat roles for the first time since joining the coalition. Your people are about to learn something that Earth's military has known for centuries. Individual soldiers don't win wars by being perfect. They win wars by refusing to quit when everything goes wrong. A new communication alert interrupted their conversation. The message bore Galactic Defense Coalition command codes, but originated from Earth itself. Corporal Morrison, you are hereby promoted to captain and assigned as senior tactical advisor for human military integration. Earth Command has authorized full deployment of our expeditionary forces to coalition theaters. Your actions have convinced both allies and enemies that humanity deserves equal partnership in galactic defense operations. Morrison read the message twice, hardly believing the words. 3 days ago, he'd been a wounded soldier scheduled for medical evacuation, dismissed as combat ineffective by commanders who saw only damaged equipment instead of adaptive potential. Now those same commanders were reorganizing their entire strategic framework around human tactical principles. Captain Morrison, Commander Veltar, said formally, I owe you an apology. And an admission. Sir, when I classified you as combat ineffective, I wasn't just wrong about your capabilities. I was wrong about what combat effectiveness means. Your species has taught me that the most dangerous soldiers aren't the ones who perform best under optimal conditions. They're the ones who perform best when conditions are worst. Morrison nodded, accepting the apology without gloating. The galaxy's about to learn something else about humans, Commander. What's that? Morrison looked out the medical center's viewport, where Earth ships were beginning to arrive in system, bringing tens of thousands of human soldiers to join the coalition's war effort. Soldiers who had trained their entire careers for exactly the kind of adaptive, creative, never-surrender warfare that had won this battle. We're not just good at fighting when everything goes wrong, Morrison said. We're good at making sure everything goes wrong for the other guy. As the first human dreadnought settled into orbit above the planet, Morrison felt a deep satisfaction. The galaxy had spent months underestimating humanity, treating Earth's soldiers as primitive auxiliaries barely worthy of support roles. That mistake would not be repeated. The Hegemony Wars were about to discover what happened when an entire species that specialized in impossible odds joined the fight. The wounded sniper who had been dismissed as combat ineffective had just changed the course of a galactic war. But, more importantly, he had proven something that would echo across star systems for generations to come. Never underestimate a human who has nothing left to lose and everything left to fight for. The real war was just beginning.